Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is a presentation of the Amicable Divorce Network. This month, January, is Child-Centered Divorce Month, and it is a very important month, especially for those in the network, because what we are passionate about and one of our missions is absolutely putting children first when it comes to divorce. And there's no better person in the entire world to present this content to us than Rosalind Sedacca. Rosalind, we're so proud to have her as one of our members, and she is a certified divorce coach and the founder of Child-Centered Divorce Month. She is very passionate about this topic. It is her really her entire focus in what she does, and she has created so many beautiful resources that are available to everyone. And so without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Rosalind to take it from here.
Well, thank you, Tracy. What a lovely introduction that is. I'm just basking in the beauty of your introduction. That's so kind of you. And thank you all for taking time out of your day to join us today. And as Tracy said, this is a passion of mine. This topic and this month is very, very special. I'm the founder of the Child-Centered Divorce Network. So year-round, I focus especially as a coach on helping parents before, during, and after divorce. If you have children, then as you all know as professionals, that children complicate the divorce issues in so many ways and make it so much more important that parents understand the dynamics connected. And what I did, this is going to be the 17th year now, is commemorate International Child-Centered Divorce Month. And the reason I chose January, of course, won't be a surprise to most of you. It's the month that almost more divorces are initiated and launched in January, and especially January through March, especially because so many parents who are even thinking about divorce will wait until after the holiday season to make that news, bring the news to the children, and to take the action involved in doing all of that. And so January is a time when people are recovering from the holiday excitement and all the activities, and then suddenly the reality of divorce comes into their lives, and it shakes up a lot of families. And I myself, when I had a divorce many years ago, when my son was 11 years old, I waited until January to break the news to him and move ahead with the divorce. So it's a very common time. There's also some tax advantages for people doing it at this time of the year. And so most people who are professionals find that they're getting more business during January. And so I thought it would be a wise idea to get divorce professionals who I call the good guys, the amicable divorce kind of divorce professionals, the child-centered divorce kind, the ones who really do care about the family dynamic and the children, and get them together and reach out to them and say, you all have downloadable digital gifts that you could make available to educate the public. And this would be a wonderful time to put out a website that just has all of these gifts available. And the goal is education. The goal is to educate parents first and foremost, but it's also to educate educators, the school systems, and to educate professionals. A lot of attorneys and mediators, financial planners, other people in the divorce realm are not always aware of the complexities that have to do with divorcing as a parent and how children are impacted by divorce. And also we'll want to educate the media. The media just does not understand a lot of the challenges that you and I face, and that the challenges that the families are facing when they have a divorce. And we wanted to make sure that as many media professionals were aware of Child-Centered Divorce Month so that they can interview you or put together articles about the topic and really focus in on how divorce impacts children. So 17 years ago, we had our first Child-Centered Divorce Month. and it's grown exponentially over the years. And I have wonderful people, all of them obviously, who care about divorce and family and children and parenting issues, and that they all provide complimentary gifts. So we have downloadable ebooks and video programs and free coaching services and tip sheets and various other kinds of resources that are available, covering a real gamut of topics before, during, and after divorce. This year, we've also included a wonderful couple who's experts on on parenting after divorce when you're in a blended family, which is a huge topic that isn't always addressed. And it's so important. They do wonderful work on talking about blended families and how to prepare for that dynamic, which can be very complicated. So we're really covering a very broad base. And I put in the chat the URL that you can all visit yourselves and encourage clients to visit. And if you're a parent yourself, during January, because it's only available during January, the address is divorced with an ED, divorcedparentsupport.com, divorcedparentsupport.com. And you just go there, enter your email address, and instantly you get taken to the web page. And the page just has one after another of wonderful courses and programs and tip sheets and options and gifts and chapters of books and all kinds of things that are really, really valuable. I'm proud, and I can acknowledge that everyone who's participating this year are wonderful, caring professionals who are all child-centered. So that's the focus of this month, and I'm encouraging you and everyone else to reach out to the media and let them know and give them an excuse to interview you or send them an article or lead them to a social media post or some other activity or event you're having. If you're having it during Child-Centered Divorce Month, then it has more credibility than the rest of the year. And it's just a wonderful time for you to be educating people about the wonderful work you're doing. So what's so important about Child-Centered Divorce Month and Child-Centered Divorce year-round is that we're really putting a focus on how children are impacted by divorce. And it's amazing that everyone talks about the best interests of the children. That's the language that the courts use and that we see everywhere and on all the websites. But not everyone really understands the best interests of the children. Sometimes it's just ignorance because they're just not savvy. Sometimes it's because there's more selfish interests that lead people to not be paying as much attention to the well-being of the children. It's a neglect or a lack of really caring about the children, especially when we bring them into the courts and they get caught up in decisions that are made by judges who are not necessarily savvy about that particular family dynamic and the complications that arise after that. So we, of course, focus as much as possible on steering people into amicable divorce, into mediation, into doing divorces in the smoothest, most possible, the smoothest way, the most family-friendly, focused way, because everyone in the family benefits in that way, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to give people the happy ending that I had in my own divorce. And for those of you who haven't heard my story, just briefly, my son was 11 when I got divorced, and I then had to learn what to do to get through the divorce and the co-parenting process. And this was back in the 90s. There wasn't a lot of information available on this. And so my ex and I muddled through and learned things that worked and didn't work and how to do it. And we were there at my son's school events and graduations and sporting events. And ultimately, he graduated from high school and college and got married. And I have a granddaughter now. And my ex and I have been there together with our spouses, because we both remarried, at all of these events. And the outcome was very positive for us. And one day when my son was in his early 20s, he came to me out of the blue and he said, you know, Ma, you and Daddy really did a good job with the divorce. And I just want to thank you, because most of my friends whose parents divorced either hate their parents or are very angry at them. And I think you guys really did a great job. And I just let out such a sigh of relief, because I was holding on to so much guilt and insecurity. You know, did I mess up my kid, and what is the long-term consequences? And that moment became the catalyst for my saying, you know, we learned a lot. We really did do a good job. And the fact that my son is thanking us was very meaningful. And I decided to found the Child-Centered Divorce Network at that time, and ultimately became a divorce and co-parenting coach. And because I had a writing background before all of this, I started writing ebooks and e-courses and programs that can help people who can't afford coaching, or who have after coaching issues that they're dealing with, or after they've dealt with the legal system and they need help in co-parenting. So I have a whole range of programs and courses on anger management, breaking the divorce news to children, co-parenting effectively, on and on. And so that's what I've been doing for the last umpteen years. It's over 17 years now that I'm doing all of that. And what I wanted to focus on with you today are some of the things that we hear and we all nod about, but we don't always give a lot of attention to what is a child-centered divorce and how kids really are impacted by the decisions that parents make. If parents only knew and understood right from the beginning, a lot of them would do things differently. They don't know what they don't know. And it's our job to help them understand and learn. And it's our job to be very compassionate, because parents need compassion, children need compassion, and everyone needs support during this difficult time. And so there are some subtle things that we all pay lip service to, but I don't think are really understood. And I just wanted to focus and emphasize a little bit about that. And some of the biggest mistakes that I see parents make are the following. And that's why I like to get the parents together as early on as possible and talk to them. And unlike a lot of coaches, I literally like to talk to both parents together when I can. So sometimes I'm hired by one parent or the other as a coach, and that's fine. And that's how it's traditionally done. But very often I could say to them, I would love to talk to your soon-to-be ex as well, because I'm not siding with mothers or fathers, I'm siding with the children. And if there's things that you don't understand about the impact on the children, then you may be making some of the ugly mistakes that we see and read about in the newspapers all the time, and they don't have to happen. And so when I get both parents there and they're listening to me simultaneously and realizing that I'm not rooting for mothers or fathers, then they're able to digest the information. And very often I'll see them make some shifts and changes in what they do. So one of the biggest mistakes, as you all know, is exposing your children to parental conflict. Studies have shown and proven again and again that fighting around kids actually emotionally and psychologically harms children. It changes their brains, and it affects who they are. And it becomes a lifelong scar. And that's why we talk about how wounded children of divorce can be. When they're exposed to that kind of conflict, it's very, very damaging. And that's not only fighting around the kids or in earshot. You know, sometimes you close the door and parents are fighting and they don't realize the kids are still picking up on that energy. It's also bad mouthing the other parent. It's also body language, eye rolling, and the way you look and talk about the other parent. It's sarcasm and other kinds of disrespectful behavior or cutting remarks. All of those things hurt children because innately children love both parents. And it does more damage to children than any other factor, whether they're in a divorcing family or in a still married family. So the conflict hurts people who are not divorcing, but just are in a marriage where the kids are exposed to that. Another serious mistake is making children choose between their parents. And I know sometimes it's inevitable when you're dealing with the legalities of the divorce. And sometimes a child wants to be asked about their opinions, especially when they're older teens. But it's usually better for the children to be told that your parents, we've talked about this, and we've decided A, B, and C, rather than saying choose which parent you want to be living with. Because again, it puts enormous pressure on the children, and it's the parents' place to make those parenting decisions. And the kids can then say, no, I don't like this situation. And they could express what they're feeling, and you could listen to them and acknowledge it. But just asking them to choose from the get-go is puts too much fault and blame on them. And there's a lot of guilt involved and shame. And we don't want that to happen to the children. So spare them the shame and the confusion of doing that and putting them in such a difficult situation. Another serious mistake that it's amazing that we see as often as we do is that parents forget to emphasize to their children that they are innocent. Even if parents are fighting about the kids, it's never the children's fault. It's the fault of the adult relationships. The relationship is not working well, and there's problems there. But the children are innocent. But a lot of children, especially younger children, but even older ones at times, will feel maybe if I didn't get bad grades in my report card, or maybe if I wasn't fighting with my brother, or maybe if I didn't do that, the parents wouldn't be divorcing. And so they put this huge emotional burden on their shoulders and create a lot of pain and suffering internally about something they have nothing to do with, and they can't change. And that becomes very problematic because there's nothing that they can do to change the fact that this divorce is happening. And that they need to understand, and they need to hear it repeatedly, that they're not at fault, no matter how much they may try to put that on themselves. It's not the case. Another serious mistake that I see far too often is turning the children into parents' confidants or pals. And adults have trouble handling the emotions connected to divorce issues, understandably. So imagine how the children feel when they get inappropriate information that they're helpless to do anything about because their parents have turned them into confidants, and they start talking about daddy or aunt this did that, and they start sharing information about the hurt and the pain that they're going through in the divorce experience. And children are very compassionate, they're very empathic. They want to hear these things, but it's not appropriate for them, especially since the general agreement is if your children can't fix an issue, they shouldn't be privy to it. So no children, even older teens, can fix a divorce relationship. If that was the case, we would be doing better ourselves as adults, and we don't. So we shouldn't be putting that burden onto them. And we want to remind our clients to reach out to friends or divorce coaches or other professionals to be the sounding boards and not the children. And equally important, another serious mistake that I see too often is trusting the children to be messengers for you. And that's the beauty of options like our Family Wizard, when there's online scheduling programs that are available, because what you want to do is not trust your kids, even the older teens, to relay messages for you. Sometimes they just forget because they're kids. And sometimes they have an agenda. Sometimes they're taking sides and with one parent or the other. And so they're going to shift or change the message slightly, put their own nuance on it. Sometimes it's innocent, sometimes it's intentional, sometimes they really want to sabotage the message for their own reasons. And whatever the situation is, it's not a child's place to be relaying messages, even if it's just dad's going to be an hour late. You should have some way of communicating so that the children aren't responsible, because it's a huge burden on their shoulders, and it's not their place to have to do that. And this last mistake, there are many others, but we're going to hone in on these 6. The last mistake is one of the most significant that I think gets overlooked. And that mistake is letting your children parent you, especially when you have precocious children. And that doesn't mean they have to be teens. You could be a precocious 9-year-old or a 12-year-old. They want to take care of the parents. They want to protect you. And very often we'll see a son say, I want to be the little man of the house, or the daughter wants to be the loving mom of the house. And this is dangerous. It can lead to children literally losing their childhood along with their childhood innocence, because once your children are privy to adult information, they can't unhear it, they can't unlearn it, they can't stop knowing it. And suddenly their minds are exposed to the complications of our divorce. And those complications, as you all know, are very complicated and very convoluted. And suddenly your child, whatever age they are, trying to figure out how to help you and become the little parent. And so if you're sobbing and overwhelmed with grief, and they come over to try to take care of you and hug you and pet you, and it changes who they are, and it creates little adults. Your children lose their childhood innocence and become little adults, and they're parenting you way ahead of their time to be parenting. Even when they have a tendency to want to do that you will always be important for them to understand and remember that. And for you to understand that you want to let your kids be kids, because that's the way it's supposed to be, and they deserve a childhood. I was a child of parents who made too many of these mistakes, unfortunately, and they were good people. They weren't bad people. They just didn't know what they didn't know. So my parents stayed together for the sake of the kids, which is a big no-no. And I grew up in a house filled with tension and conflict and fighting, and parents who badmouth one another and all of that. And they were so proud of themselves for staying together and not getting a divorce. I would have done anything to have had them had a divorce and ended the stress and the tension that I was exposed to. I was walking on eggshells most of my life. My mother used me as a confidant. She would confide these terrible things about my father and his family, and your grandmother said this, and all of these other pieces of information that are not at all appropriate for children to hear. And again, my mother didn't know any better. She didn't have divorce coaches. She didn't have anyone to reach out to. And so she took advantage of having a precocious young girl. So from the age of, I'd say, 8, 9, 10, 11, I was mom's confidant. I was the person that she shared all her issues with. And I was always caught between loving dad and not wanting to know what I knew about dad. It's a tremendous psychological burden. And parents are doing it not intentionally. No one would intentionally do that to their kids, but we're feeling needy, we're feeling weak, we're feeling overwhelmed, we're feeling frightened. you can avoid. And the more educated the divorce professional is, and the more likely they are to remind the parents in advance, the less likely these things are going to happen. So I had a client, a couple who came to me, and again, I encouraged them, let's talk together, the three of us, even though the wife initially contacted me. I said, I'd love, if your husband is willing, I'd love to talk to both of you together. And Dad was very, very angry at Mom about the divorce. It turns out that Mom had an affair, and he was very angry, and he felt very justified in wanting to tell the kids that this wouldn't be happening. We wouldn't be having a divorce if it wasn't for your mom. She had an affair, and it's just messed our whole family up. She's a bad guy. I'm the good guy. We've all seen that as professionals, and it's very understandable. It's to justify how you're feeling. And I had to sit down and talk to him and both of them and explain, yes, you have every right for being upset and angry at Mom for doing this. However, what is the advantage for your children to know this about Mom? And those kids happened to be, I think it was like 9 and 12 years old. What good is it for them to know about Mom having an affair and bringing this into the equation? What outcome do you want? Do you want your kids to hate their mom or disrespect their mom? What good is going to happen if they are aware of this level of conflict? And after we talked for quite a while, he got it. To his credit, I was very impressed and proud of him. He got it. He understood that he's taking the high road for the kids. He's not doing this for Mom. He's not even doing this for himself. He's doing this for the kids, for the bigger picture of the child-centered divorce, because the kids without this information are going to go ahead and be very comfortable with what the parents are talking to them about and what's to expect ahead in their lives. And they did. They went ahead. They had a child-centered divorce. They got divorced. It went beautifully, picture perfect. They used my ebook on breaking the divorce news to the children, which sets them up right from the beginning in a very positive way with positive expectations. And it worked out beautifully. And ultimately, the dad thanked me for sharing this and stopping him in his tracks. Not every client's going to listen, and not every client's going to be stopped in their tracks, but what a difference it made for the entire family dynamic for Dad not to bring that up to the children. This was a gift to the children. And I said to him, when the kids are grown adults, if you want to sit them down at some point and tell them, that this was a huge decision for me because your mom had an affair and now your kids are adults and you're talking to them, that's a decision you can make when you're moving ahead. But for right now, what you're doing is giving your kids the gift of moving ahead on a level that they can understand and appreciate and still love both of their parents. And it worked. So it becomes very complicated. All of these issues are, as you all know, but when we talk to them from the eyes of the children, and remind the parents to put themselves in their children's shoes, they will often avoid some mistakes and make better decisions because they are grasping the idea of how important it is to see it the way the children see it. I had another couple where the opposite situation, Dad was having an affair and they had 2 children and she was pregnant with the third while he was having the affair. So when she found out about the affair, she was beyond angry and furious and hurt. And who couldn't empathize with his mother who's going through this situation, and while she's pregnant, knowing Dad's having an affair? And she hated him with every fiber of her being. And one of the questions that a lot of professionals will say, especially amicable professionals, will talk to clients about and say, do you love your children more than you hate your ex? Because no matter how angry you are at your ex, if you love your children more, you're more likely to make better decisions. You're more likely to think about the children and put them first. And that's what the children deserve. So I asked her that question, and she said, I don't know. I'm not sure. She was so filled with rage that she couldn't be sure that she could let go enough of hating dad in order to put the kids first, because she was so right and so justified in being right. And this was a tremendous issue for her. And so they moved through the divorce process, not in preferred. They took some of my advice, and then they moved on for the next 2 years. And it happens that I knew the grandparents in this family. They had referred me to this couple. So I heard from the grandparents that after 2 to 3 years, something finally shifted in the relationship. Dad got remarried again immediately to the woman with the affair, and all of that was going on. And these were young kids. These were 3 and 5-year-old kids who were being exposed to mom's hating dad and hardly being able to tolerate him. Hardly being able to tolerate dad when they did have any interactions together. And what happened is that the little 5-year-old who was then 6 or 7 said to mom one day at a family gathering, she said, Mom, why are you always so mad at daddy? Why are you so angry at daddy? Stop doing that. And it wasn't until then that mom got it, that mom realized she thought the kids were sort of oblivious. She didn't interact with dad. She didn't talk about dad, and she figured the kids were oblivious to what was going on. And it wasn't until her own daughter said to her, Mommy, I hate when you're so mean to daddy. She changed. She just changed her attitude. She opened up to being more civil in their interactions, and it was a gift to the children. Sometimes it takes parents a while to get the gift for the children, to understand that you're taking the high road or making sacrifices because this is what your kids deserve. And once they do, they make better decisions. And so that's what the Child-Centered Divorce Network's all about. That's what International Child-Centered Divorce is all about, educating parents and families and professionals around the world in understanding a little bit more about the world that we're all involved in, and how to make it better for the children who are always innocent. So I thought I'd stop here and take any questions or comments you had, any feedback at all, to see if there's something that you wanted to address.
I just had a quick question. I think a lot of us on the call may be the first contact for a family. Somebody comes in, and a lot of people have the level of anger that you're talking about, that they are sort of being forced into this, divorce because of the conduct of the other. For anybody here that's a professional, what should be our best next step for that couple to guide them towards a child-centered divorce?
Well, I always suggest that you invite them to visit my website, because I have a free ebook right on the homepage, and tons of articles on every topic imaginable that they can be interested in talking about. So there's a lot of free information, just free resources. And the ebooks and e-courses and programs I have are very low cost. So that's another way they can get information about all of this. And I also do a complimentary coaching session. So moving and opening the door to working with me is always a plus for the family, but they don't have to work with me. I have a directory on my website at childcentereddivorce.com, where I have all of the divorce professionals, attorneys, mediators, financial planners, coaches who are working in this realm, who I vetted and have met and spoken to, and they can find someone who they want to work with that way on the free directory. And I'm happy to include any of you who are professionals who are listening today. because my goal is just this bigger picture of educating everyone about the fact that there are viable resources available. So that's one thing you can do. And then you could have a conversation and explain, just have your clients put themselves in their child's shoes at whatever age those children are, and ask them questions about how they feel the children are going to react to certain things. And so they're getting to understand, looking through the child's eyes, of what's going to happen. We all know it's very different for every child. So you could be having parents talking together about the upcoming divorce and breaking the divorce news to children. And if there's 4 children in that room, all 4 of them may respond totally differently. There's nothing that's the same about any of these things. And I love to remind parents, no one knows your children better than you. And that's why you don't want to be trusting the courts, and you don't want to be trusting outside sources. If you two can agree that the only thing you can agree on is that you love those children more than anything else, then we can work with you and we could help you handle all the other kinds of decisions. Because once you have the parenting equation of loving those children clear, the other kinds of decisions can be made and you could work around it all. It's getting the parents just to understand that it's up to them, and that cooperating together and making decisions together are really important. And I want to emphasize that it's the tone and the energy of the parental communication that's the most important thing for the children throughout, before, during, and after the divorce. So if you sit down with your children and say, I know this is the worst thing that could possibly be happening, but we're getting a divorce and we're just going to have to get through this time together. Well, how do you expect children to feel when they're being parents have been aware that life has been tense and there's been conflict and there's been sadness at home, and we've talked about it, and we've decided that everyone will be happier if both of us are living in 2 separate homes, and you're spending quality time when you're with your mom's, quality time with your dad, or whoever the parents are, and that we're going to work this out, and it's going to be better for everyone. I promise you, we're going to be having better times ahead. The children will be feeling more secure and comfortable knowing that both parents are talking together, talking to them together, talking to one another together, and still acting as parents. When the 2 parents act as parents, whatever decisions they make, the children can digest, because they're used to the parents saying, this is what's going to happen. When the further apart the parents are, and the less likely they are to talk to the children together, the more likely there's going to be conflict in the equation of how the children are going to be impacted by the divorce. It's as simple as that. So the more you can talk to the parents and let them understand that they need to be aligned in talking to the kids, that's all they need to do, is be aligned in that conversation. And you don't have to have all the details when you're having the conversation about the divorce. You don't have to have timeframes and who's living where and when and details. All you need is the energy of saying, we're working on this together and we'll let you know. So when kids ask either parent a question, what about this and what about that? It's always wisest for the parents to say, that's a good question. I'm going to talk to your father about that. I'm going to ask mom. We're going to sit down and we'll talk to you and we'll come up with a solution. Even though you're divorcing, you're still parents. And the more you can be aligned in being parents to the kids, that's all they care about, is they're not losing both parents. So you want to remind them that they will always have their parents. They're not losing either parent. Both parents are going to love them. Their parents will never divorce them, and they're always going to be there for them. Kids can adapt to any changes in life when it's approached in that way. And that's why one of the big messages that I always share with parents about having the conversation is this is about change and not about blame. So we don't point the finger and say this wouldn't be happening unless it was because of your stupid mother or father or whatever. And instead we say this is a change in the form of our family. Like we change grades in school, we change sports teams, we have changes in our friends, in our hairstyles, in the clothing we wear. Change is just inevitable year round. And this is a change that's happening to our family. The family is changing, but that doesn't mean it's bad. It's just change. And we're going to all survive together, and we're going to have happier times ahead. When children hear that kind of a message, unified by both parents, they can accept a lot of things. They can go with the flow because they're not losing the parental connection. So the more the parents grasp that, the better off their children are going to be in going through whatever they have to go through. Now, I know high conflict divorces are not like that, and not every parent resonates with the term child-centered divorce. I understand you're dealing with a lot of other levels, and I am not the right fit for everyone. But a lot of people will shift over into child-centered divorce when given an opportunity to understand what we're talking about. And that's what keeps me going.
And I think that's important, that we just want to spread awareness and let as many professionals and members of the public know what the good choices are, because that does dramatically impact the long-term mental health of the children. And you're so generous. Thank you for the ebook that you provide on your website. If you're listening to this recording or here live when we post the recording, we're going to put a link to her ebook with it, so you always know where to find it. It is a wonderful resource to share with clients, friends, family, anybody who might be facing this issue, because the sooner you can catch the divorcing couple to set them on the right set of facts and conversations, the better. I know we've all probably had those cringe consults where somebody comes in and somebody has already told the children in a very terrible way about the divorce. So as soon as we can catch people, the better. So have that resource available for potential clients to try to have them make good choices. Thank you to everybody for attending. We are going to conclude the recording at this point, but if you want to stay on for some more questions for our live presentation, please do, and check the text that goes along with this video if you're watching the recording for all the resources that were mentioned today. Thank you very much.